What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sanity Symphony Podcast, where your story is our soundtrack. And here I am, your host, Official Insanity, joined with my special guest today, Bilyana. Say hello to everyone.
Hey everybody, I'm Bilyana Garland. I graduated from A&T in 2023, and then now I'm working as a full-time news reporter in Eastern North Carolina, based here in New Bern.
Awesome. And it's an honor to have you here on our show today, and thank you for taking the time to speak on your journey and your career.
Yeah.
And for starters, we're going to go through your journey as a college student in NC-A&T University. So speak on your journey as a college student in journalism.
Wow, that is like a long loaded question to summarize 4 years, but I actually didn't go to school for journalism at A&T. I went for political science. And I'll be honest, my experience was kind of like a blur in some ways because it was during the COVID years that I was going to college. So I kind of missed my freshman year. I was doing it online, and I was actually living in Germany for my freshman year too. So I was like dealing with the time difference of making sure my stuff gets in on time and then staying up for different Zoom meetings and things like that. But then my sophomore year, I finally touched down on campus, and it wasn't the greatest just because of COVID, and we had to wear masks and just distance ourselves. So I couldn't really get involved as much as I wanted to. And then my junior year, I was able to get more involved. And then my senior year was like nothing ever happened and everything was normal and it was really fun. But yeah, I didn't go to school for journalism. I went for poli-sci. And then my senior year of college, I realized that I didn't want to go to law school like I thought I did. And so I then really 6 months before I graduated, I'm like, like news reporting seems kind of fun because I saw it on my TikTok a lot, just day in the life of a news reporter. And then I just did certain things to kind of get my foot in the door to become a news reporter. And I had 2 job offers before I even graduated. So that was a great thing.
That's awesome. And was there anything in college that helped you prepare for those internships?
Actually, I didn't have any internships in college. That's the crazy part. So I was always a really good student in college. I had a really high GPA. I would be involved in different things, but I guess it was like in political science, I guess my heart just wasn't in it. And so I would apply to different things, but then, my classmates would get them. So I felt a lot of times like, oh man, how am I going to get a job? How am I going to be successful if I can't even get an internship in anything? Because I would apply myself, but I just wasn't getting the feedback, of like, oh, you got this. And so that fed a lot into my thoughts about, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but more like I felt like, oh, I can't do it. Like, why is this not happening for me? And so then I just kind of switched my course very abruptly, and I didn't get any internships in journalism actually. And I just got a full-blown job, right before I graduated. So yeah.
And what were some of those challenges that you had to overcome when landing those jobs?
Oh man. Well, the biggest challenge is that I had no background in journalism. That was the biggest thing. I didn't know anything. And I figured out what I wanted to do, like get into journalism right before the last semester. So I took one journalism class that was more about how to write an article, but I never took a broadcasting class, never did anything to that extent. And so my biggest challenge was, how am I going to get a job if I don't have any experience doing this whatsoever? So I think it was really from the grace of God, because I would pray a lot about it. And then he connected me with certain people that then brought me into that field more, where I connected with an actual reporter from WXII. I think that's ABC 45. I think that's what their call letters are in Greensboro. And so she every Friday would come down to campus and basically give me a crash course of everything that goes on with TV reporting. So I learned very quickly. And then I got involved with Aggie News, which is like our university broadcast. And with that, I was mainly just behind the scenes. I was just watching everything because I couldn't really be in it because I wasn't a journalism major at all. But then one day there was tryouts to become anchor, and I'm sure there was like a lot of people that tried out, but I tried out too. Just, why limit myself? Why, I don't like to rule myself out of things. I like to just, apply, try for things and see what happens, because I'd rather try and, get rejected than not try at all. And then I ended up getting the position of anchoring the news, which is really crazy because I'm like, okay, I've never done any of this. But yeah, that the main challenge was mentally me understanding where I'm at and then trying to push through and be ambitious and see where it could take me.
Well, no doubt. And could you speak on some of the pressures you faced on reporting live and staying objective while also balancing your work and personal life in such a demanding field?
Wow, that's a great question. Wow. Can you repeat that question one more time just so I can
Yeah.
really.
So, what it was like facing the pressures of reporting live and staying objective, and also balancing your work and personal life in such a demanding field.
Wow. Well, I'll touch on the first part. Reporting live, that was a new thing for me. Never did it ever. I mean, the first time I went live, like, or did anything in front of a camera was broadcasted on television. I never really, like, oh, we're going to do these, fake little lives to get you to practice. It's more like, here it is. Here's the big show, and don't mess it up, basically. But reporting live was so anxiety inducing. I mean, my heart would pound like crazy. My hands would get super sweaty. And the thing is that I had a really big fear of public speaking actually in college all throughout my life. And so I hated presenting things, which I don't understand how I'm in this field. And I love it so much. I'm so passionate, but I really had a fear of public speaking. So reporting live, that it took a year for me to get over the anxiety over it. But then also staying objective, man, that I thought it was going to be more challenging to stay objective, but actually, I just go based off the facts. I have a process where I take in all my information, I write a lot of notes about things, and then I just cut the fat. I'm like, okay, what is confirmed and what is true? But with my personal life, it's difficult because sometimes I feel a certain way about things. And then it's like, okay, how do I not let that get in the way of me doing this story? Whether that's, doing a really emotional story or, something political, like how can I balance that? But at the end of the day, I take the approach that I am informing the public. I'm not there to share my opinions about things, and that's not what my job is. My job is to just, hey, this is the information. You do with that, whatever, you make your own opinion about it. So that's how I kind of balance it. But yeah, did that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
And I wanted to mention as well, prior to our interview, I did some research on some of your work, and I remembered a video you had posted on like your preparation for reporting, anchoring on a news before, and
Yeah.
like the process. And I can imagine how it was like, and just like the amount of hours and work and practice you had to put in just to finally feel comfortable on being on that camera and reporting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I first started, I was working 14, 16-hour days. I was not, after an 8-hour day, just going home. Like regularly, I was working. I wouldn't say, I mean, technically it was overtime, but it was mainly to improve myself because I knew that I had zero experience. And so I wanted to get better very quickly because I had to kind of catch up because all my counterparts, they had those 4-year journalism degrees and I didn't. And so I then because I'm a multimedia journalist. So what I do is I pitch a story. I have to find stories, and then I have to go out. I have to set up my interviews, film them, and then I have to get video, get all my elements, come back, write a script for it, then edit everything together, and then present it all in one day. And so after that, I would then go back, and there was an anchor that really took me under his wing, and he would edit my script again to make it better. And so then I would stay late just to kind of redo the whole thing. And while that was very time inducing, it actually put me on the fast track to be really good and work really hard. So it did take a lot of time to get to that point as well.
No doubt. And has there been any of the stories that you've shared on the news that's been very impactful to you based on the message or just the reaction you've got off of it?
Wow. Wow, that's a great question. There are so many stories. I mean, even the story I did last night where this woman, she lost her entire home in a house fire. And I
Hmm.
made visiting her, and it's just like, that is just emotional because you're coming home. She was coming home from the store to see her entire house in flames. And what do you do at that point? She lost everything. There was nothing in there that was salvageable. And so she's like, we don't have anywhere to stay. Like, where do we go? And so just being in those moments where people's lives are changed, that is something that I take very seriously. And it really does hit close to home because I'm on scenes where people are getting, where people were murdered and people's lives are just changed forever. And I'm there at the worst moments of people's lives. So it takes some responsibility to understand what you're doing and then also be empathetic and still be a human and not just like, oh, I'm a reporter and I want to put this camera in your face.
Mm.
Yeah. And so, but there was also some crazy things where I've done investigative stories that people have threatened to sue me over. Like it gets kind of crazy like that, where when you expose things that shouldn't be exposed, then people will kind of go after you and get upset and want to sue you, even though they have no grounds because I did my job and I did my due diligence. So a lot of crazy things. I've done a lot of crazy stories. Yeah.
And so far within like your time working in the news landscape, do you have like a perspective on how much it's been evolving throughout the years?
Wow. It has definitely evolved because, back in the day, it was just TV news. I mean, you saw your anchor, they're wearing a suit. That's where you got your information from. There was no social media. You either read the newspaper or you watched your news broadcasters and you trusted them because they had that firsthand information. But now it's changed where news is everywhere and anybody can create news. I mean, we see it on TikTok, Instagram, people are showing things that are in their community and just talking about it. And so now we're moving into more, instead of making the broadcast the priority, it's now digital content. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And I'll be honest, we're kind of struggling in that realm because we're trained to just focus on TV news. And now it's like, okay, we have to make special content for social media. And that gets challenging, but that's where we're headed because less people are watching news. And I mean, younger people are not really watching news. I mean, do you watch the news or are you more like on social media getting your news that way? And so we just have to adapt to that, which is difficult.
Yeah, and also like most people don't realize nowadays in this generation, people's attention span is very short. So like people aren't gonna sit through a whole 20-minute video of you talking about a story. They want to see like get to the point and then they want to hear the drama and that's it pretty much.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it's hard because before we're used to storytelling, which you can tell a story in any kind of way, whether it's in 5 seconds or in 20 minutes or 5 minutes. But it's how do we create an atmosphere where people, everyday younger people, want to listen to what we have to say because nobody really wants to see the person in the suit on the desk anymore to get information. They want to see just a normal person who has information, explain it in an accurate way and not misleading people. And so that's the biggest thing.
I agree 100%. And in your career, has there been a favorite story to report on or any dream news that you would like to report on in the future?
So are you asking like a favorite story in the future that I would want to report on or a favorite story that I've done?
Both.
Wow. I should have prepared that a little bit more because I do a story every single day. And sometimes it's the craziest things, but a favorite story. Wow. I think for me, it's not necessarily the story in and of itself. It's like what it took to get the story. And so what comes to mind, there's a lot of things that come to mind. But what comes to mind the most, I guess, is there was this person who drove a car through this Mexican store. And I really wanted to do that story because that's crazy. You're destroying somebody's business and livelihood. But my biggest issue is that I couldn't find the family or the owner. Like I was calling, I was really, putting so much effort into finding who owned this so I can talk to them. And I was almost about to give up because it was kind of a far drive from where my station was anyways. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to head there. And so I'm driving there and I don't see anybody in the front. And I'm like, man, I kind of drove here for no reason. But then I'm like, you know what? No, I think it was God. God was telling me to just get up, walk around. And so I walked around and boom, like the owner, the family, everybody's there. And so I'm able to film them, interview them, and get that emotional sound. And when I put it together, I felt like it was very impactful because I got, the victim side of it, because a lot of times we can't get that. And we just report like, oh, person drive through a car or drove a car through a store, and that's it. But you don't really get that emotional side. So I think in that moment I got really lucky. And that sticks out to me a lot. But man, there are so many. I wish I had a better answer for that, because there are genuinely so many stories.
No, that answer actually matters because most people don't know like the struggles that you have to deal with behind the scenes when it comes to something that you want to report so bad and ends up not even making the airs for a specific reason like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that happens a lot. There are a lot of times where I'm contacting people and they don't want to be interviewed, especially if it was about somebody in their family who was murdered or just any situation like that. A lot of times they don't, sometimes they do. And that's my thing, is you always need to try and just ask. And you never know. Some people will say yes, some people will say no, but put that out there and do and that's the thing where it's like working hard matters, because if I was lazy, I would have probably just sat at my desk and be like, oh, I give up. And instead I drove there just to see. I mean, I think it was like an hour. Like I drove an hour just to see if the family might be there. Like that is a risk, but I'm always into taking risks because in my experience, they pay off. There was another story that comes to mind when I just said that, because there's this, I guess this is probably an impactful story that I did as well, where there is this Black family that lives in, it's close to the water, Beaufort County or Carteret County, and they live in Beaufort. So that's about an hour and a half from my station. But for a long time, they've owned this plot of land. And Amazon actually just did a documentary on them about 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago. But they've owned this land. Then somebody in their family did a false deal, or it was something where the land was taken from them, and now a construction company owns it. And now they're not allowed to be on their own land that they say, is still theirs. But it was through false legal documents. And it's a long story. But this man who went to jail because his house was on this land. He ended up going to jail for trespassing because the land no longer belonged to him anymore. And so when he comes back out of jail a few years later, he then gets arrested for hitting a person with his car. And the person that he hit with his car is actually a person that is designated to sit on that land to make sure that family doesn't get on the land. And so I wanted to get both sides of the story. So I interviewed the family of the man, who police say hit the other guy with his car. But then I'm like, I want to get the guy who was hit with the car. I want to get that. And so I couldn't get a phone number. He was not on social media. This is an elderly man. And so I then drive all the way out there just to see if he was home. He wasn't home. I then see his truck pull up like on the side of the road. I'm like, maybe that's him. I then pull off to the side and it was him. He just got out of the hospital and then wanted to do an entire interview. It's like stuff like that. It's just crazy. And that ended up doing really well on social media, because how many times do you get the person who, was hit with a car, and on top of like this whole story of this land and who owns it and all that kind of stuff.
So you weren't able to get the story out, right?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, you were?
Yeah. I ended up getting a story. I got both sides. And that is just a crazy thing, because I was the first reporter that they wanted to talk to in decades, the family that says they own that land, because they've been burned so badly in the past. And so not only was I able to interview them again and bring their story back to light about how they feel like there was an injustice against them, but also I got the other side as well. So it was like a complete story with a bow wrapped around it. Like, here you go.
I think it definitely had to do with your reason why you wanted to put that story out, on why it got out. Because at first, you wanted to just get some information and it was a struggle. But when you realize like people really need to know about this, and because, this is an elderly man who probably doesn't have that much help with this situation. So with your reason on why you wanted to help this man out publicly is the reason I feel like why it went out. And it's a great message behind it.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, is that it wasn't necessarily me wanting to help. It was more like, this has been a long contentious thing, because you have one family who says they've owned this land for decades and then it was ripped away from them. And then you have a man who is supposed to live on this land to make sure the other family doesn't get on the land. Like, it's this whole thing. And so it was more like, I wanted to put this back out there and have people think about it more instead of, because there wasn't really anything I can do to help. And that's a lot of times with stories. I can't do anything to really help. It's more like, here is this story, and make what you want out of it in a way.
For any people who are looking to be in the same field as you or are aspiring to be in your same position, what are some advice you would give to them? For example, like the skills and qualities needed for your field, or anything you've learned from your mistakes?
Wow. Well, I guess the first tip is to stay humble and to realize that you are forever learning something. And just because you've had a lot of internships or you have that degree or you have the GPA does not mean that you are then automatically successful in a career path in journalism, because at the end of the day, it's about hard work and it's about passion. And just because you have like the resume does not translate into you then being successful on air. That's just what I've seen a lot. And I guess, yeah, working hard and then taking risks, because in this industry, you're not going to get anywhere sitting on your desk chair. Like that's just not going to happen. And you have to take that drive and you have to take that risk and that gamble. And it sometimes pays off, sometimes it doesn't, but at the end of the day, you at least tried. So that's what I would say. But to get in the field, everyone has a different route. I mean, I took an abnormal route where I didn't even have a degree in it and I just tried my best to be in it. But don't count yourself out and don't disqualify yourself, because when I was looking at the job requirements, I didn't hit any of them. I didn't have 2 years of experience, didn't have a journalism degree, didn't have anything. And yet I was still able to apply and then get multiple interviews. There was several stations that were interested in me and offering me positions. And that's because I didn't just quit and give up or say, oh, I'm not qualified to do this. So that's what I would say. And then there was a second question to that.
Like any lessons you've learned based off your mistakes?
Well, I make a mistake every day. That's the truth. There is always a day where I can go back and be like, I could have done that better. I could have done this differently. Why didn't I do this? Why did I do that instead? And I have failed a lot of times, especially on camera. Man, I have so many embarrassing moments on camera. And it's about realizing that you're going to make a mistake, but then getting up. It's the getting up part and not quitting, because a lot of people quit or they give up on themselves because they weren't as perfect as they thought they would be. And so then that's how you don't become successful. You have to make the mistakes, fail, but then get up and try to do better. So there are too many mistakes for me to even say. I've made a mistake in every area of journalism. Like but that's what comes with it. And you're not going to be perfect. And the people who think they're going to be perfect are the ones that don't want to grow. And they're the ones that limit themselves the most.
I agree 100%. And even like the most precise perfectionists make mistakes all the time. And sometimes they do get frustrated from those moments, but they take those as lessons and add that fuel to their efforts into making their product better, basically.
Yeah, that's what it is. And it's about getting better. And I guess the biggest mistake is thinking that you're great. That's the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake is thinking that you are already perfect, because you're not. That's the truth. Even people 15 years in the game make mistakes. But the difference with them is that they recognize that and they're able to push through, and they're not demoralized because they messed up, or, it's going to happen. And that's what holds you back. Like, don't get cocky. That's the biggest thing. And it's hard not to get cocky when you're on TV. Like, it's kind of like, well, I'm on TV, look at me. But then if you have this cockiness, then it's like, you're not going to get better, because in your head, you don't see any room for improvement because you already think you're great.
And what is next that people can look forward to you in your upcoming projects or anything upcoming that you have going on in your career?
Wow. Well, that I'm still trying to figure that out, because my contract is ending up soon. It's ending soon. And so I have to either make the decision of going somewhere else, and I would love to go to a bigger market, or I was given another opportunity at my station for upward mobility. So that's mainly, you can look forward to maybe a different position or a different place that I'm going to be in the next 6 months. So that's where I'm at.
Just continue to be great at what you're doing, and everyone looking forward to all your greatness in your career.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This is fun.
No problem. And one last thing I ask all my guests at the end of every episode, if there's one artist and in any genre of music who you resonate with and why.
Wow. That is that's a tough question. Oh my gosh. One artist in any genre of music. I'm split because I have grown this love for country music. And so I love like Annie Wilson, but she's a Christian artist. I really love worship music and Christian
Mm.
music. And so I really love her. I didn't really like country music that much before, but I really resonate with her lyrics. And yeah, I would say that.
Okay. I'll have to do research on her because I haven't, this is my first time hearing her before. So
And okay, this is more of a controversial take, especially because of what happened a few days ago. But I don't really listen to Kanye West, but I do love his Jesus is King album so much. And like I used to listen to it in the past, but that's just been like rediscovered for me. And I know he's been in the media for the last couple days. But yeah, I love that album a lot. And that's what I've been listening to a lot as well. So I do recommend that specific album. Now, everything else, I don't know. But I do love that album.
it's never to be ashamed to be a fan of Kanye's music, especially if it's high quality music. But when it comes to the things he says, that's when you gotta watch, who you take sides with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, I'm not celebrity obsessed at all. Like there's not, that's why it was so hard for me to answer that because I don't go to concerts. Like I'm not really that into celebrities where I'm like, oh, I will die on this hill that they're the greatest artists ever. Like, no, I really couldn't care less. It's more like I like music that really glorifies God. And if I connect with it, then I like to listen to it. But I'm not solely obsessed with a person where it's like, okay, now I want to like listen to their music because I love this person. It's more like I love the music that they make in this time period.
So would you say the Annie artist was she someone who you would turn to whenever you're having like rough moments in life?
Yeah, well, definitely. And also just encouragement because she really glorifies God with her music. And so when she's singing about God, it makes me want to, think about God more, especially when I'm having a rough day. Like that's the biggest thing. And it's not just with her, it's with any Christian artist that I really like to listen to. So just the encouragement, especially in news, because news can be depressing, like really depressing. And so when you listen to music that glorifies God, it just encourages you so much more.
Amen to that. I agree 100%. 100%. And that concludes another episode of Sanity and Symphony Podcast, where your story is our soundtrack, here with your host, Official Insanity, and my special guest, Bilyana. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.
Bye.